My dad is 87 years old, and for entire weeks he couldn't sleep because of the pain in his shoulders. He would wake up in the middle of the night, change position again and again, but nothing eased it. You'd see him in the morning with tired eyes, a hunched back, and his spirits on the floor. We tried everything: menthol creams, massages, warm compresses, even prescription pills. Some things helped a little, but the pain always came back. Until one day, almost by chance, we found something that changed everything. It was a homemade oil, something we prepared at home with natural, simple ingredients that anyone can get. We started applying it every night, with a small massage on the shoulders. The first night he slept a little better. The second, he didn't wake up even once. And on the third, he got up, looked at me and said, "I haven't felt this good in weeks." I won't forget that moment. Not because the oil is magical, or because it's a definitive solution, but because we finally found something that worked, without overspending, without hurting his stomach, and without side effects. Today, I want to tell you exactly how we did it, which oil we used, how we prepared it, how we applied it, and why I think it worked so well. But I also want to share with you 6 keys we discovered along the way. Simple tips that can help relieve chronic shoulder pain, especially in older people. If you or someone you love is dealing with similar discomfort, this video might give you a different alternative, something accessible, natural, and with real results. And before we begin, tell me below in the comments, how old are you, and from which country or city are you watching me? I love reading you. Now then, let's get started. Everything began very subtly. One morning my dad told me he had an ache in his right shoulder. He didn't think much of it. He figured it was from sleeping badly or from some sudden movement when getting up. But as the days went by, that ache turned into constant pain. At first it was only in one shoulder, then it spread to the other, and the hardest part was that the pain got worse at night. When he lay down, any position felt uncomfortable. He would wake up every 2 or 3 hours, murmuring that it hurt, that he couldn't find a way to get comfortable. He tried sleeping sitting up, with more pillows, with fewer. Nothing worked. Sleep became something out of reach for him. With the insomnia came irritability. My dad, who had always been cheerful, jokey, and good-natured, started to seem dimmed. He lost patience easily, spoke little, got distracted easily. During the day, he looked tired, with tense shoulders and a distant gaze. It was hard for him even to put on his shirt without help or reach a glass on the shelf. What he used to do without thinking was now an effort. As a family, it was painful to see him like that. He had always been independent, a strong man, used to solving everything on his own. Seeing him ask for help with such simple things broke our hearts. And the worst part is we knew it wasn't about willpower, but real physical pain. We tried common painkillers, some pharmacy creams. A doctor even prescribed a muscle relaxant, but it made him very sleepy, and he didn't like taking it. One day he said, "I don't want to spend the rest of my life depending on pills." That's when we knew we needed to look for another option. We wanted something natural, something that didn't depend on a prescription or an expensive treatment, something he could apply himself at home without side effects or risks. My sister remembered that my grandmother in her town used to make plant-based oils to relieve pain. So we started to research, to read, to ask acquaintances, and little by little, we put together a simple but powerful recipe. At that moment, we didn't know it, but that decision would change everything. Not only because he found relief, but because he began to feel in control of his body again. And for someone his age, that's priceless. Why many older adults suffer shoulder pain. As the years go by, the body changes. We all know that. But what many don't understand until they experience it is how deeply uncomfortable something as simple as moving your arms can become. In my dad's case, as in that of so many older people, the shoulder pain didn't appear because of a fall or a serious injury. It was a slow, accumulated wear and tear, the kind of wear that doesn't show from one day to the next, but gains ground. First an ache, then stiffness. After that, a jab when raising the arm. until one day, you can't even hang a shirt without feeling pain. One of the most common causes is tendinitis. Over the years, the tendons that surround the shoulder joint become inflamed from repetitive movements or simply from the tissue's natural aging. On top of that, bursitis often appears, which is when the small fluid-filled sacs that protect the joints become inflamed and cause pain when moving the arm. Another very common cause is mild osteoarthritis, a condition that wears down the cartilage that lines the joint. The result is pain, stiffness, and a sensation of internal grinding when moving the shoulder. And in some cases, calcifications appear as well. Small calcium deposits that form inside the tendon and make every movement hurt, as if a needle were piercing from within. All these conditions have something in common. They make the simplest tasks complicated. Getting dressed alone can be a challenge. Raising your arms to comb your hair becomes a battle. Reaching a pot on a shelf is no longer automatic. Little by little, the person starts avoiding certain movements for fear of pain, and that leads the body to become even stiffer. I remember the case of Mrs. Clara, a neighbor who had always been active and lively. She liked to cook for her grandchildren, tend her plants, sweep the patio. One day she told me, "I don't know what's happening to me, but I can't even lift the broom without my right shoulder hurting." She thought it was temporary, but weeks passed, then months. She tried resting, but that only made her weaker. When she finally went to the doctor, they told her she had wear and tear in the rotator cuff, one of the shoulder's key structures. She couldn't even carry a grocery bag anymore. And the saddest part was that she stopped doing many things she enjoyed just to avoid the pain. The problem isn't only physical, it also affects mood, confidence, and independence. Many older adults stop going out, stop moving, even stop socializing, simply because moving feels uncomfortable. But there's something very important I want to say clearly. It is not normal to live with pain every day. Aging doesn't mean giving up. There are simple, natural, accessible things that can help. They may not cure the root cause, but they do relieve, improve mobility, and give back something very valuable: peace of mind. And that is worth more than any medication. What we tried before and why it didn't work. Before we got to the homemade oil, we tried almost everything within our reach. The first thing was the most common: over-the-counter painkillers. The doctor prescribed pain pills, and for a couple of days they seemed to help. But the relief was short. 2 or 3 hours later, the pain returned. Plus, they started to upset his stomach. My dad, who has always been careful about what he takes, said one day, "This takes away one pain, but gives me another." And he didn't want to depend on a pill every few hours just to sleep. Then came the ointments. We bought several of those marketed as muscle soothers. Some had menthol and produced a cooling sensation when applied. Others were the kind that burn, that warm the skin. But none gave the result we expected. My dad said some irritated him, that he felt itchy, or that he simply felt nothing but the strong smell. One night he even washed his shoulder off after a few minutes because he couldn't stand the sensation. What seemed like a quick fix ended up being one more annoyance. Then we heard about an ultrasound therapy to relieve inflammation. We consulted a clinic, but the price per session was high, and the full treatment meant going several times a week for at least 1 month. For an 87-year-old with limited mobility, that wasn't easy. The transportation, the waiting time, the cost, it all added more stress than relief. And in those days, anything that increased his frustration was the last thing we wanted. We also tried massages. We took my dad to a very kind physical therapist who gave him a few sessions, but after 3 or 4 times, he said he didn't feel a real change and preferred not to keep going. It's like they're rubbing the pain, but not removing it, he told us. Although it wasn't a bad experience, it wasn't effective for him either, and he lost motivation. Little by little, we sank into a very frustrating feeling. Everything we tried seemed not to work, and not for lack of will or care. It simply didn't work as we expected. And when you see someone you love wake every night from the pain, move their arms with difficulty, or give up halfway through the day because they can't stand it anymore, that weighs on you. A lot. We realized we needed something different, something affordable, that didn't depend on a medical prescription. That could be prepared at home, without risks, without side effects. Something that would give him back the hope that he could still feel well. And that's when the idea of looking for a home remedy was born. Not as a miracle, but as an alternative, a possibility, a new chance. Because when everything you've tried fails, sometimes the simplest thing ends up making the difference. The discovery of the homemade oil. The idea of the homemade oil didn't come from a doctor or a specialist. It appeared, like so many valuable things do, by chance and out of necessity. One night, while we were talking about what else we could try, my sister remembered something she had heard as a child. Our grandmother, who lived in the countryside, used to prepare an herb oil when one of the grandchildren had muscle pain. It was a simple recipe, made with natural ingredients she always had in her kitchen. At the time, we didn't think much of it, but remembering that made something click. We searched through some old boxes and found a notebook with home recipes. There it was, written in small letters and stained with old oil. To relieve pain in arms and shoulders, prepare oil with rosemary, clove, and ginger. It was like rediscovering a forgotten family treasure. That same day, we also saw a video on the internet where an older woman talked about a similar preparation. She told how it had helped her husband with back pain. It was the sign we needed. We decided to try it. For the base, we used extra virgin olive oil, which is gentle on the skin and has natural anti-inflammatory properties. Then we added dried rosemary, freshly grated ginger, and a few whole cloves. The rosemary stimulates circulation. The ginger warms the tissues and eases tension. The clove, for its part, has a mild analgesic effect and a deep, relaxing aroma. The preparation was simple. First, we warmed the oil over very low heat, without letting it boil. We added the rosemary, the ginger, and the cloves, and let it infuse for about 15 minutes. We turned off the heat and let it sit until it cooled. Then we strained it to remove the plant bits and poured it into a clean glass jar. We let it rest overnight so the aromas would concentrate better. The result was an amber-colored oil with an enveloping scent. It wasn't strong or unpleasant. On the contrary, it smelled like home, like warm herbs, like something that invites rest. To the touch, the texture was silky, slightly thick. When applied to the skin, it didn't burn or cool. It felt warm to the touch, comforting. The first night we used it, we didn't know what to expect. We applied a small amount to my dad's shoulders, with a slow, circular massage, without pressure. He closed his eyes. He didn't say much. That night he slept somewhat better, but he still woke up once. The second night, we did the same. This time he didn't get up even once. In the morning, when I went to see him, he was already awake. He told me, "I slept through the night. I can't believe it." But it was the third night that changed everything. After his massage, he fell deeply asleep. Upon waking, he sat up in bed, looked at me and said, "Would you believe me if I told you that it hardly hurts?" And I stayed silent. Because in that moment, I realized we had done it. Not with something expensive, nor with medications, but with patience, with care, and with a forgotten recipe that brought us hope again. How to apply it correctly, and key tips. One of the most important things we discovered is that the oil, by itself, doesn't work miracles. Its power lies in how it's applied. It's not enough to smear it on and wait for the pain to disappear. You have to do it right, calmly, intentionally, and above all, consistently. The first thing is the oil's temperature. It shouldn't be cold. In winter, for example, the oil can become thick or too cool, and that reduces its effect. What we did was place the jar in a container with hot water for a few minutes. No need to boil it. Just warm it a little so it's slightly lukewarm to the touch. That temperature helps the muscles relax and helps the body absorb the plant's properties better. Then came the massage. And this is where the real difference lies. The massage should be gentle, circular, and without excessive pressure. No squeezing hard or rubbing quickly. Movements should be slow, with the open palm, moving from the neck toward the shoulder, and from there toward the arm. If there's pain, It's better to avoid touching directly on the most sensitive point. It's enough to work around it, letting the oil's warmth do its part. A detail that helped a lot was covering the area after the massage. We used a warm towel or an old, clean, soft t-shirt. That kept the heat in, helped the oil not dry too quickly, and prolonged the relaxing effect. Also, avoiding direct contact with cold air made a difference. It's a simple gesture, but very useful. As for the time of day, the best is undoubtedly before bed. It's when the body is getting ready to rest, the muscles are less tense, and there are no more distractions. It's also when the pain tends to worsen, so applying the oil then helps prevent a bad night. The application time doesn't have to be long. Between 10 and 15 minutes is more than enough. What matters is the quality of the massage, not the amount of time. We would put on soft music in the background and made that moment part of his nightly routine. It not only relieved the pain, it calmed him. And that calm state helped him fall asleep more easily. But the most important thing of all is consistency. The first day there may be a small relief, the second, a bit more. But it's on the third or fourth night that you really notice the difference. You have to keep at it. Do it every day without skipping, at least for 3 nights in a row. And if possible, keep it as part of the weekly routine, even when the pain begins to fade. Finally, something we can't fail to mention. This oil is for external use only and shouldn't be applied to open wounds, irritated areas, or allergic skin. If you notice redness, itching, or burning, stop using it immediately. Although the ingredients are natural, every skin is different, and you should always be cautious. In short, the oil works best when accompanied by care, attention, and patience, and when it becomes a ritual that not only soothes the body, but also calms the soul. What other changes helped lower the pain? Although the homemade oil was a key point in my dad's improvement, we soon understood that true relief came when we made some more changes in his day-to-day life. Small decisions, simple adjustments, that together made a big difference. The first was adding a gentle morning exercise. Nothing intense, nothing requiring strength or machines, just a few minutes of movement to activate the shoulder area. I showed him how to make slow circles with the arms forward and then back, keeping the back straight and without forcing it. At first it was hard for him, but as the days passed, we noticed that his shoulders were less stiff. It helped wake the body, and little by little, his range of motion improved. Another important change was something as simple as changing his pillow. For years he had slept with an old flat one that no longer offered any support. We looked for one that helped keep the head and shoulders aligned without sinking in. A slightly higher pillow with medium firmness. The difference was immediate. He slept better, woke less, and no longer had that feeling of accumulated tension when getting up. Sometimes the pain isn't only about what you do during the day, but how you rest at night. We also made some adjustments to his diet. We started to notice that certain foods seemed to increase inflammation. He used to eat a lot of white bread, deli meats like sausages or processed ham, and sweets with refined sugar. It wasn't easy to change those habits, but little by little, we reduced their consumption and replaced them with healthier options. Whole grain bread, more fruits, more vegetables, fewer canned foods. It's not that he became a healthy eating fanatic overnight, but he understood that what he ate directly influenced how he felt, especially after noticing that on the days he ate lighter, his shoulders didn't bother him as much. We also started taking better care of his hydration. Before, he drank little water, barely 2 glasses a day. We insisted he drink at least 6 or 8 glasses daily, even if just sips throughout the day. Dehydration can stiffen tissues, affect circulation, and increase the sensation of joint pain. By hydrating better, his digestion improved, his energy improved, and yes, his pain level too. When we put all these changes together, the oil massage, the gentle exercise, the new pillow, the cleaner diet, and good hydration, something started to happen. It wasn't an immediate miracle, but it was a visible transformation. My dad began to regain his spirits, to move with more confidence. He started walking down the hallway again without holding on to the walls. He started smiling more often. He even went back to helping water the plants, something he hadn't been able to do for months without complaining. And that's when I understood that the body, even at 80 or 90 years old, responds when you treat it with respect and consistency. Pain is often not a definitive sentence. It's a signal. And if you listen to that signal and make the right changes, you can feel well again. Not perfect, not like at 20, but much better than before. Because sometimes it's not about one magical solution, but a combination of simple things that work together. What happens if the pain returns or doesn't improve? Although the homemade oil helped my dad a lot, it wouldn't be honest to say everything was perfect forever. There were days when the pain returned, though less intensely. And there were weeks when, for one reason or another, the symptoms got a bit worse. And it's important to say this clearly. Not everything always improves in a straight line. That's why, if after applying the oil, doing the massages, and making small changes in the routine, the pain doesn't improve, or if it returns frequently, it's essential to consult a professional. One of the best decisions we made was taking my dad to see a physical therapist specialized in older adults. It wasn't a long or expensive visit, but it was very revealing. He explained patiently that many shoulder pains come from accumulated bad posture, lack of mobility, or tensions that weren't treated in time. He taught us specific exercises to strengthen the area without causing harm, and warned us about what not to do to avoid making it worse. Among his most useful recommendations was to practice some very gentle mobility exercises, especially designed for older people. Simple things like opening and closing the arms slowly, doing pendulum movements with relaxed arms, or even moving the shoulders in small circles while seated. The key is to do it every day, without forcing it, and with full awareness of the body. Another suggestion was to check daily posture. Sometimes, without realizing it, we spend many hours slumped, with shoulders dropped or tense. My dad used to sit in a soft armchair that didn't give him good support. We switched it for a chair with firm back support, and we also adjusted the table height so he wouldn't have to raise his arms more than necessary. These small details help much more than you'd imagine. It was also important to check the mattress. One that's too soft or deformed can generate tension in the neck and shoulders, even while we sleep. By switching to a firmer ergonomic one, we noticed an improvement not only in pain, but in his overall rest as well. Sleeping well is an essential part of the recovery process. And of course, there's lifestyle. If a person spends all day without moving, or eats foods that increase inflammation, or lives with high stress levels, it's natural that the pain won't fully subside. The body needs movement, good food, and also peace. That's why I want to tell you something very important. The oil is only a complement. It's useful, yes. It relieves, yes. But it's not a magic cure. It's part of a whole, a tool within a broader approach. It's not enough to apply it if it isn't accompanied by other care. And above all, we should never, never accept pain as something inevitable just because of a certain age. Aging doesn't mean suffering. Feeling pain every day isn't normal, and even less necessary. There's always something that can be done. Maybe not to eliminate it completely, but to reduce it, control it, and live with it in a dignified way. Because no one deserves to wake up every night from an ache. No one should stop moving, dressing, living, because of a pain that can be treated. The important thing is not to give up, not to resign yourself, to keep trying, keep caring for yourself, and never lose the hope of feeling better. How you can prepare your own oil at home. We've reached the part many have been waiting for. How to make this oil at home. You don't need to be an expert or have complicated equipment. You just need patience, care, and a few ingredients you probably already have or can find at any market or natural product store. Let's go step by step. First, the basic ingredients. 1 cup of base oil. It can be extra virgin olive oil, almond oil, or even coconut oil. The most recommended is olive oil for its smooth texture and natural anti-inflammatory properties. 2 tablespoons of dried or fresh rosemary. This plant stimulates circulation and helps relieve muscle stiffness. 1 tablespoon of freshly grated ginger. It has a warming anti-inflammatory effect that penetrates tissues easily. 8 to 10 whole cloves, which provide a mildly analgesic effect and a deep aroma. Once you have everything on hand, we move on to the preparation process. Second step, infuse the oil. Place the base oil in a small pot or deep pan. Add the rosemary, the ginger, and the cloves. Warm over very low heat without allowing the oil to boil. The goal isn't to cook the ingredients, but to release their properties slowly. This process should last between 15 and 20 minutes. If you see the oil starting to smoke, lower the heat even more or remove it for a few minutes. During that time, you can stir gently with a wooden or silicone spoon. You'll notice the aroma intensifies little by little, and the oil's color begins to change. Once that time has passed, turn off the heat and let the oil rest until it's completely cool. This can take between 30 minutes and 1 hour. Third step, strain and store. Carefully strain the oil using a fine strainer or a clean cloth. That way you remove the bits of herbs and spices, leaving only the liquid. Then pour the filtered oil into a dark glass jar with a tight lid. Dark glass helps protect it from light and preserve its properties better. How long does this oil last? If you store it in a cool, dry place away from the sun, it can keep for up to 2 or 3 weeks without a problem. It isn't necessary to refrigerate it, although in very hot climates, it may be a good idea to keep it on the lower shelf of the fridge. Important precautions. Before applying it for the first time, do a small patch test on the skin of your forearm. If there's no redness, itching, or discomfort after 30 minutes, you can use it safely. Never apply it on open wounds, active irritation, or very sensitive skin. Also, avoid heating the oil in the microwave, as it can damage its natural components. Always use low heat and clean utensils. And if you want to make a different version, you can adapt the recipe. For example, add a few drops of lavender essential oil if you're looking for a more relaxing effect before bedtime. Replace the rosemary with dried mint if you prefer a refreshing rather than warming sensation. Add freshly grated turmeric, which also has powerful anti-inflammatory properties. The important thing is to use quality ingredients, respect resting times, and apply it consistently. Making this oil at home isn't just a way to relieve pain. It's also an act of self-care, a way to reconnect with the natural, to trust simple remedies again, made with your own hands. And that, in a time when everything seems complex and expensive, is a gift in itself. My dad is 87 years old, and for weeks, I watched him lose sleep, spirit, and energy because of a pain that seemed to have no solution. We tried everything: creams, medications, massages, advice, specialists, but nothing gave him real, lasting relief. That's when we decided to look back, to the simple, to the natural. And in that search, a forgotten recipe appeared, an oil made at home with common ingredients and a lot of care. We made it without many expectations, but what happened next surprised us. In just 3 nights, the pain started to give way. The nights stopped being torture. Rest returned, calm returned, and little by little, my dad's smile returned too. The oil was part of the solution, yes, but so were the habit changes, daily care, consistency, and hope. Today I want you to take this message with you. If you're going through something similar, don't resign yourself. There's always something we can do to improve our quality of life, even after 80 years. Sometimes it isn't about big treatments or costly therapies. Sometimes it's enough to observe carefully, listen to the body, and try simple things we may have forgotten. If you or someone in your family suffers from shoulder pain, I invite you to try it. To prepare this oil with your own hands. To turn the massage moment into a small ritual of well-being. And above all, to never lose faith that it's possible to feel better. Tell me in the comments if you or someone close has gone through something similar, and if you'd be willing to try this homemade oil. I'd love to read you, learn your story, and accompany you on that path of care and relief. Because sometimes, the best remedies are at home. You just have to dare to try them. Thank you for being here. I'm sending you a huge hug wherever you are.